It's 2 a.m. You're standing in the middle of the Mojave Desert with your barefoot 6-year-old son, watching your own parents' car disappear into the darkness. No phone. No water. No mercy. They called you a leech and told you to learn to crawl. But what they didn't know was that they just created their own nightmare. Because sometimes the people you abandon don't come back begging. Sometimes they come back to erase you completely. This is my story. And trust me, you've never heard revenge like this. The desert wind felt like ice against my face as I watched the red taillights of my parents' car fade into nothing. My 6-year-old son Mason clung to my side, his bare feet already turning blue from the cold gravel. His innocent voice cut through the silence. "Mommy, are they coming back?" I couldn't answer him. My throat was too tight with rage and disbelief. Just 30 minutes earlier, we'd been sitting in their living room having what I thought was a normal conversation about money. I'd refused to give them my child support payment for what they called a short loan. That's when everything exploded. My father's words still burned in my ears. "Leeches like you need to learn to crawl." He hadn't even looked at me when he said it. Just grabbed my duffel bag and threw it into the dirt like garbage. My mother. She sat in that passenger seat with her arms crossed, watching her daughter and grandson get abandoned in the desert with nothing but contempt in her eyes. "You're 25, Tessa. Stop acting like the world owes you," she'd muttered as I begged them to reconsider. No phone. No signal. No water. The last exit was 40 miles behind us, and ahead was nothing but endless darkness. Mason's feet were already blistering from the sharp rocks. I slipped my old ballet flats onto his tiny feet. They were 3 sizes too big, but he didn't complain. He never complains. As I wrapped him in my hoodie and held him against the cold, something inside me began to change. This wasn't just cruelty. This was calculated punishment for daring to say no, for having independence, for refusing to be their financial servant. They wanted to break me. But in that desert, something else broke instead. And it wasn't my spirit. Dawn came with no cars, no hope. Just the terrifying realization that we might actually die out here. I was already imagining the headlines. Single mother and child found dead on Route 96. Then, like a miracle, an old pickup truck appeared. The woman who saved us was named Sandra, weathered hands, kind eyes, and a truck that smelled like lemon cleaner and old books. She didn't ask questions, just handed me water and cranked up the heat. "You look like someone whose family should be ashamed," she said after we'd driven in silence for miles. I stared at her, startled. I was kicked out too once. Pregnant and cold. Now I run a mechanic shop and rescue stray girls. Looks like I just picked up another. That's when I broke down completely. Sandra gave us shelter for 2 weeks, but more importantly, she gave me time. Time to feel the pain. Time to realize that what my parents did wasn't just cruel. It was a deliberate attempt to destroy me for having boundaries. But here's the thing about people who try to break you. Sometimes they just wake up something much more dangerous. By day 10, I was working in her garage, learning to change oil and replace timing belts. She paid me in cash and quiet confidence. "You're sharper than you look," she said one afternoon. "I've always been sharp," I replied, wiping grease from my hands. "They just never let me prove it." That evening I found myself staring at my phone, at our old family group chat. My mother's last message read, "You always twist things to make us look bad. No one told you to bring your drama into our weekend." My drama. As if they hadn't abandoned their daughter and grandson in the desert at 2 a.m. My hands shook, not from fear but from purpose. I didn't want revenge that looked like rage. I wanted something much more elegant. I wanted complete erasure. If they threw me away like garbage, I decided to put the lid on the can, permanently. First I changed my last name. Sandra signed as my witness. Every document that connected me to the Carver family vanished. Driver's license, social security records, health insurance. Mason's name changed too. He got my new name, not my father's legacy. New phone number. No forwarding address. No digital trail. But erasing them from paper wasn't enough. I went deeper. I found our family lawyer's contact and wrote a formal letter declaring that I wanted out of their will, out of their estate, out of their legacy completely. I wanted it notarized and official. When Sandra asked if I was sure, I told her, "They threw me out like trash. I'm just putting the lid on the can." The more I removed their influence from my life, the lighter I felt. Like their cruelty had actual weight. And I was finally setting it down. I started writing again. Essays, stories, thoughts I'd buried for years. Sandra read one by accident and said, "You've got something. Don't hide it." Within 3 months, I had 3 part-time jobs and was rebuilding a life from scratch. Not repairing my old one. Creating something entirely new. But then something unexpected happened. A letter arrived addressed to my old name, in childish handwriting. Mason had secretly written to his grandparents. "Dear Grandma and Grandpa, I love Mommy. You were mean to her. But if you say sorry, maybe we can see you again. Love, Mason." He'd drawn a heart with 3 people inside. 1 huge smile and 2 deep frowns. Reading that letter, I realized my revenge wasn't complete. They needed to see exactly what they'd lost. 3 months later, I drove back to their house. But this time I wasn't limping. I wasn't crying. And I definitely wasn't crawling. I parked down the street and stared at their perfect little house with its smug garden and that ridiculous family is everything plaque hanging by the window. The irony was almost too much. When I rang the doorbell, my mother opened it with her phone in hand. She blinked twice when she saw me like I was a ghost. "Tessa," she croaked. My father appeared behind her, holding a bag of chips. "She's back." I knew she'd come crawling. Smiled. I didn't come to crawl. I came to bury. They tried to talk, to spin the narrative, to minimize what they'd done. Dad even chuckled. "You still mad about a little desert drama? Come on, you survived, didn't you?" That's when I pulled out Mason's letter and held it up. "This is what you lost." Mom tried to grab it. I yanked it back. "It's not yours anymore. You don't get to see what love looks like after you broke it." Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a small brown box. Inside were copies of every legal document I'd filed: name changes, will removals, custody updates, bank closures, and a handwritten letter I'd written them from that desert motel. At the bottom was a single photo. Mason smiling with Sandra, holding a birthday cupcake. "The birthday you missed," I said, "because you don't even know when it is." I handed the box to my mother. "I'm here to erase you. Officially. Emotionally. Completely." Dad shouted as I turned to leave. "You think you're special now? You think that makes you better than us?" I turned back one last time, standing at the edge of their porch. "No," I said calmly. "I don't think I'm better. I know I'm free." Then I walked away. No slamming doors. No screaming. I just erased them the way they tried to erase me. 2 years later, I stood in front of a classroom full of single mothers at a women's shelter in Arizona. I was a guest speaker, sharing how to rebuild after betrayal. My name tag read Tessa James. Mason sat in the back, doodling happily. No longer that scared little boy with blistered feet in the desert. One woman asked, "How did you do it? How did you get out?" Smiled. "I got out when I stopped trying to make broken people hold sacred things. You can't build a future in a house that buried you alive." Outside, the desert wind picked up. The same kind that used to sting when I cried on the side of that road. Now it just felt like freedom. Because here's the truth. They kicked me out like garbage, thinking I'd come crawling back. Instead, I erased their existence like they never mattered. And I never looked back. Sometimes the cruelest thing you can do to people who abandon you isn't revenge. It's making them realize they were never important enough to hate. They wanted me to crawl. Instead, I learned to fly. The desert wind that once made me cry. Now it just whispers one word: freedom.